Well, welcome to the tutorial on how to be able to use Spreaker from your desktop. I'm looking forward to being able to teaching you this, so let's go ahead and begin. Let's start by going to your internet browser and typing in Spreaker.com. And when you click on it, it should bring you to this page here. When you're on this page, there's a tabs across the top that you can use to be able to download the program. You're going to go to Create, and when you click on Create, it'll bring up this section here, kind of walk you through all this information. But really, all you want to do is be able to record and go live. So click in that section, and it'll bring you here. It's for Windows and Mac, so either way, and it even has it for Chrome as well if you have a Chromebook. So go ahead and download it. I've already done so. You click download. It's very quick. It should show up on your desktop. Take a moment to install it. Once you've installed it, go ahead and open it, and this is what it's going to look like. This is the interface. I'm going to walk you through three main parts of it and end with the fourth. So the first of the three main parts is this bottom section here called the microphones and sources. This is where all your microphones are going to be plugged in and where you're going to be able to choose and make sure that you have the microphones you want in the order that you want them in. In my case, I have a mix pre. So the mix pre is going to show up right here. And as you can see, the volume level's going pretty good, and I'm happy with it. If you want to have more than two microphones, you're going to have to come up to your preferences. If you're on a Mac, go to Spreaker Studio Preferences. If you're on a PC, you're going to want to do the same thing. On the left-hand side, you have General, Console, and Advanced. Just go to Console. And in the console section, it's okay that these things are checkmarked. Those things are pretty helpful. But under sources, I think the default is 2. I can sometimes have up to 4 people, so I want to choose 4. It doesn't hurt to have 4 and not use them, but it will hurt if you need 4 and you can't find them. So you need to make sure you set that up in your preferences. When done, click Done. So you can see I have 4 spaces here, but I'm only using one microphone, so only one of them's live. These buttons are if you have well, not necessarily. Let me rephrase that. If you only want to hear one thing, this will allow you to select those 1 or 2 people to kind of regulate the sound of, or the volume level. Let's say you're not sure whether you're loud enough as the host or your interviewees are loud enough to be able to be heard. You'd kind of put your headphones on, plug them into your computer, listen to yourself when you're good, listen to the person number 2, listen to the third person, fourth person, and then you take them off. Make sure you take them off because you may end up just recording your own voice and not anybody else. So anyways, that helps. Now these are to mute people so that their volume does not come through. So when I mute it, you can see the volume level is completely shot. Okay, so I don't think you're going to want to mess with these at all. Unless someone's like coughing, sneezing, and they're not turning away from the microphone, then yeah, boom, kill that so it doesn't kill your podcast. Just remember to click them back on. So that's microphones and sources. I'm now going to move to what's called auto ducking. Auto ducking, I don't understand it well enough to be able to show you how to do it, but I do know that if it works, it's great, and this is what you do. It will currently be set to disabled, so enable it. And then you're going to want your microphones, the ones that you want to be able to interact. Go ahead and put a check mark there. I am the host, so I will most likely only leave that one check marked. You can leave these all checked as well. But basically, you're going to play with these sliders. And these sliders are going to tell the computer when the music is playing at the beginning of the podcast and you begin to speak. You don't want the music to go away completely, but you do want it to go down in volume. So when you play with these sliders, you're probably going to want a pause that's a little bit higher, something like in the 700s. I'm not sure about these two. Play with those. You can go, let's just pretend. Oh, here you go. Cool. So it gives you a description of what each of these little buttons will do for you. So get familiar with them. And then click off of there. And it should work like this. Let me just show you real quick. If you play a song, let's just play this one for now. and I begin talking, it should bring the volume down. In this case, the song was almost over. So if I begin talking, this volume should come down while I'm talking to allow for me to be louder than the volume of the song. So that's auto ducking. So let's come over here and talk about tracks and playlists. Tracks are for if you want to, they only give you two options, one here and one here. If you want to play a song at the beginning of your podcast and play a song at the end of your podcast. And how you add songs is very simple. You click the plus button. Just know where the song is on your computer because I can't help you with that. But let's say you have it in a folder somewhere. I have mine in Dropbox in several different folders. I'm just going to pull this one here, open it up. And when I close the podcast, I want a totally different song. I'm going to choose this one here and open that one. So I'm going to play them just to test them out. Fun and lively. Play this one. Sad and slow. Not that I would put those in the same podcast, but just for fun, just so you can tell the difference between the two. I have them now set up. Song 1, Song 2, and my volume. This is how much volume I have. 0 to 100. And this is basically left and right faders. So if I wanted to come in from the left ear only, right ear only, I would do that. I don't recommend you mess with that. Just leave it right there in the middle. So that's tracks. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Let's say I begin my podcast and I hit play. I'll go about 15 seconds of music and then I will start talking. Now, if the auto ducking works well, you won't have to do what I'm going to do, but my auto duck isn't working. So I would just bring the volume down, way down to like in the 20s and start talking and then bring it all the way back up to continue playing. Here we go. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Walter Martinez, and we're doing a podcast on how you can use Spreaker for your ministry. More in just a second. Again, thanks for joining us. Not that bad, right? So if we were recording, what you would have heard was about 10 seconds of music. Then the music starts to go down because I'm physically bringing it down here, talking for a bit. And then as soon as I'm done talking, bring the slider back up. And then when I'm ready to talk again, I just bring it all the way down. That's one way that you can do it. Another way is if auto ducking is working just fine, then great. Just let it do its thing and you won't have to play with any sliders. You just talk and it'll automatically bring the volumes down a little bit lower to what you set it at. Same thing with the end, except at the end of my podcast, I would start at 0 and I wouldn't use auto ducking for this. But I'd hit play as I'm doing the end of the podcast, etc. Thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled with what we've been able to share with you today. And just signing off until next time. So I'd bring the volume up all the way once the podcast was done. And you've got to get a feel for it. Just kind of feel the rhythm of the music, listen to it. Where is it a good place to now start bringing it all the way down until the podcast has officially finished. They've had a chance to just kind of hear that music and bring them to a close, and then you're done. That's how you would use tracks. If you wanted to use playlist, this is different, and it's just your style of podcasting. You may end up wanting to play music throughout your entire podcast. And for that, you'd need to make sure that the time that your podcast is, let's say you go for about 20 minutes, you're going to want 20 minutes worth of music. You're just going to hit the plus button and, you should have your music already lined up and good to go. You're going to put a bunch of music in there to make sure that you have 20 minutes worth of music. And here's your slider for that. So you'd probably start nice and loud. Right? but whatever. The music's playing. When you're about to talk, bring it down, etc., etc., etc. Talk, 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 talk. And then if the podcast starts right there, then just kind of keep it there. And as soon as that song's done, let's put that at the top. As soon as that song's done, it'll go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. And when you close your podcast, just remember to bring your volume up. And then when it's officially done, kill it. So that's how a playlist would work. The only thing I don't like about the playlist is that unless you've got if you've got your headphones on, you can hear how you sound and how the music sounds, and it probably would work just fine. I like being able to see the volume levels from the music. On this one, you don't really see much. You're just listening to it. So have your headphones plugged in to make sure that you can regulate the different songs and their sounds and the volume of the sound. Yeah. Okay, so that's tracks, playlist. These little features over here, I don't really play with them very much, but for fun, you've got some nice little sound effects. As you can see, they overlap. And you can even add sound effects, so that's kind of cool. If you had some, you can add them there. I think you can pause it, yeah. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. You can click on it again, or just bring the volume all the way down, and that'll mute it as well. Chat is for when you're live. It's a really cool feature. I'm not going to get into it too much because I don't think many of us are going to be doing podcasts live. But if you are going to use podcast live, then I recommend that you go to Spreaker and read up on it a little bit. Because, go to the create section and look at it that way. Because that'll allow you to be able to interact with your listeners. And if you want them to ask questions, they can ask you questions and you should be able to see it right there. Live, as they say. Okay, so for the fun of it, let me show you how the podcast might look. I'm not going to talk through it. In other words, I'm not going to be talking to you. I'm going to be pretending that I'm actually doing a podcast so that you can see how everything fits together. It's going to be super brief because I'm just going to do the intro, tiny bit of talking, then an outro, and done. Watch what I do with my mouse, though, so that you're familiar with what you would do to record an actual podcast. I'm checking over here. Microphones and sources are good. My music's set up. It's to 0. Good, good. Volume is all the way up. And I hit start. I have 2 options, live. I'm not live. I'm offline. I just want to record. Hello and welcome to another podcast. My name is Walter Martinez. I'm honored to be your host today. We're going to be talking about some things regarding media and the use of media in ministry. More in just a second. Though I wasn't able to be joined by Samson Sembeba in the studio today, he does send his love. And because of that, it's going to be a little bit of a one-sided conversation here. But I do want to share some of these important attributes of ministry and how you can use media when it comes to ministry. So thanks for joining us today, etc., blah, blah, blah. Thank you very much for joining us and for allowing me to share some tips using media and ministry. We'll have a part 2 coming out next week, so make sure you tune back in to the Oklahoma Conference podcast, something or other. Thanks again. Okay, So I've hit the pause button, and I can either take a break and come back and record some more. Like, let's say it's split into two parts, but I want it to be on one podcast, and I just hit the stop button. I'm sorry, not the stop button, the record button again, and start all over. I can put new music in here, do whatever I need to, set it up all over again, and then start over as a part two within the podcast itself. Or I can click stop. In this case, I'm done, so I'm going to click stop, and it brings me to this page. When I'm here, I can now listen to my most recent podcast. I'm going to skip around. I'm honored to be your host today. We're going to be talking about some things regarding media and the use of media and something or other. Thanks again. I'm not going to hit pause because you get the idea. That's the actual recording. And at this point, I can do one of two things. I guess three things. I can delete it and say, that was awful. Or I can go to export it and work on it some more in a different program. If I know how to do that, then I'll do that. If you don't, and you don't really care, you're just wanting to crank out some podcasts and they sound good to you, you're good to go, then you can just hit publish. When you hit publish, you put in your information. Please make sure that you select the right podcast, because we're going to have different pastors doing different podcasts coming from the same source. They're going to be totally different podcasts, but because we share the same source, it's going to be a drop-down menu. And if you accidentally click on mine that says Central SDA Podcast, you're going to go try to listen to it on your podcast. You're not going to hear it. But all of my listeners are going to hear your podcast. So just make sure that you select the right one. And when you're done, you can just hit publish, or you can get a little fancy. The maximum that your picture can be is 5 megabytes. But if you have a logo, or if you have whatever you're going to be talking about, talking about food or whatever, you have an image of food, just drop it right in there, or choose a file from your hard drive and drop it right in there. Yeah, you can I'm going to recommend that you don't auto share, because long story short, it'll auto share our shared Oklahoma conference thing with everyone. So it won't be specifically yours. In other words, anytime one of us launches a new podcast, it's going to go on your feed and on my feed, and it just becomes a little bit cumbersome. Let me see if I can figure that out so that we can all share it social media wise. But for the meantime, just simply do the left-hand side, put your picture in, and then click publish. Or you can publish later. If you click publish later, it gives you time and date that you can do that. And then hit publish, and you're good to go. You've launched your podcast, and you're free. You're done. Now, when would you use the publish later? Perhaps you recorded 6 podcasts today. You're going to launch one of them today, but you want to publish the other ones later. Then you would publish the one for today. You'd go back, take the next one, and say publish, and then you'd publish that one a week from now, and et cetera, until you're done. Just for the sake of saying you exported your podcast and you want it, you're done editing it. Now what do? Let me show you real quick. So when you export it, it's a different process. You call it a name, you save it somewhere on your hard drive, and then you edit it with another program. When you're done editing it, let's just for the sake of saying I edited this podcast, I would then bring it back into here where it says drag or click upload your files. I'd let it go, and look, it's at the top. Now when you publish, it's super simple. Do the same thing you would do normally. Select the right podcast, click publish or publish later, and you're done. And that, my friends, is the mere basics to using the Spreaker software. I'm already looking at this thinking, oh, whoops, I should have mentioned this. So let me mention this to you. over here on on this section here, let's say I want to go back and I want to actually record another podcast, but I'm looking at this thing and I'm not sure how to go back. Well, on the left-hand side, you have drafts and uploads, and you have record. Drafts and uploads, record. So you can get back and forth between the two by clicking those. All right, cool. Hope this helps.